Everybody, today we're going to be talking about marketing as a long game. And when I say long game, I I mean this is something that's near and dear to my heart, but it really means that, for a lot of my career, marketing has been perceived as something that is an extension of sales. And so by definition, we look at the tactics and the strategy on a quarterly basis and hitting these artificial quarterly pipeline goals to meet overall annual goals. Well, I very much do not agree with that kind of mentality. I do think that marketing is a service organization for sales, and it should be offering air cover and leads and all of those things to sales so that they can be successful in what they're doing and supporting over the overall company goals. But marketing is not sales. And so that is one thing that needs to be clarified. And it has a very different responsibility to the company. And if it does not perform the thing that it's responsible for, the rest of sales, the rest of the organization will not be successful. So when I think of marketing, I think of it always as a long game. And this is always something that I encourage is that we should be creating marketing strategy that aligns to the overall corporate goals, the long-term corporate goals, and it should be measured on an annual basis. And so when we're looking at creating a marketing strategy, we definitely look at that as a long-term thing. But then we also, sorry, my puppy's barking. We look at that as an overall long-term thing, and then we have short-term tactics that help support that overall goal. So when I'm thinking about campaigns and programs that are run in a quarterly basis, there is a time and place for all of those. There is a strategy behind all of those that support that overall goal. So when we're looking at sales and marketing, let's definitely separate the two. If marketing does their job well, sales will have the things that they need in order to go to market, get those customers in, have qualified leads. But let's look at some fundamentals that we should put in place as we're thinking about marketing and making sure that it retains its long game status. So the first is create a long term, as I said, long-term strategy that aligns to the corporate goals. And so this is important to do so that the messaging is on point always, that we have high level messaging for all of the different audiences that we're supporting. So typically, if you have an enterprise product for a B2B business, you will have a couple of different people that you're marketing to. You'll have the user, you'll have the decision maker, you may have other people that are influencers in this decision, and you should have clear overall messaging that you can then tweak for those individual audiences, but it all rolls up to the same message. It all saying the same thing, and it's being consistent. That's the first point that I'd like to make. The second one is build a strong brand. So many times I see the jump from let's do marketing into let's create demand and then capture it. And without a strong brand presence, one that is repeating in front of your audience on a consistent basis, it makes demand generation so much more difficult. Creating demand and building a brand can be very similar in what it's doing. A lot of the same things are happening. But when you are building a strong brand, you are creating a demand for your product when you're creating that brand. So let's make sure that we have the things in place to capture the demand when it comes in. But I do not want to conflate demand generation with building a brand. Those are two different things, and you need the brand built to support your content generation, content capture activities. The second one, or the third point, is to be consistent. So in order to build trust in your audience, you should be repeating your messages several times and be consistent in those messages. You don't want to have something over here that says one thing and something else that's over here. They should be supporting, they should be complementary, and they should be repeating. And most companies hate to repeat the same messages over and over again. They think every week we need to have a different message. But the thing you have to remember is not everybody is seeing everything that you put out there every time you put it out there. So if you are marketing on LinkedIn, I mean, how many times are you going to miss messages as you're scrolling through and then it refreshes and new stuff comes in and then the other stuff gets pushed to the bottom? You need to repeat that message so it's always popping up, or it's trying to pop up in a place where somebody's going to see it. And it often takes many, many touch points for someone to see that. And think about if you need to be repetitive in somebody's mind to build your brand, which is a thing. That's why you see like all your streaming platforms and all the places you go to get information, you'll see the same ads over and over again. They're creating mind share in your brain by repeating their brand in front of you over and over again, their messages in front of you over and over again. I mean, how many of you have seen the Progressive commercial like 1,000 times? Like you think of insurance when you think of Progressive. They're doing a great job of branding who they are. So you do the same. Be repetitive, get in front of them so that you become part of that evoked set that they have when they're thinking of a problem. They're going to think of you as the solution bringer because you have been in front of their face many, many times. So be consistent, be repetitive, and give it time. The other one is be agile in your marketing. So if you see an opportunity pop up, you should absolutely be taking advantage of that because, you know, if you don't, somebody else will. But you should not be pivoting. And when I think of pivoting, I always think of the Friends episode, pivot, pivot. But, you know, we should not be pivoting as often as Ross did. Like that, if you're constantly pivoting, you're not giving your marketing messages and your repetition and all of that enough time to actually bring results. And so pivot, but pivot strategically, always pivot in alignment with your long-term strategy. And don't do it so often that your audience is getting whiplash. Like that is not going to help build trust in your brand if you're constantly changing tactics and messages and things like that. Give it time to take root. It's just like planting, you know, a garden. You got to plant the seed, fertilize it, water it, give it sun, and love and attention, and eventually the sprouts will come. And finally, I really am a strong believer in measuring marketing on annual ARR revenue targets. And in my blog, I specifically underline and italicize annual because if we are always measured on quarterly goals, you are not giving yourself enough time to make sure things are taking root. And it does take time to get that plane off the ground and into the sky and getting at cruising altitude. If you are constantly changing, if you're constantly having these short-term goals that you're striving to achieve without which really take your eye off the long-term goal, you're going to have so much turbulence getting up into the sky. It's going to take you longer to get to cruising altitude. It's going to take you longer to get to your ARR and those goals. And if you're constantly looking at short-term goals, your results will show because you won't have taken the time to really develop your audience, develop your message, and before you're pivoting onto something else. So those are my top tips. Take a look at my blog. It's all documented there. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to discuss.